Thank you for everybody who's joined in. Let me briefly start by saying we're ready to go. And thank you everyone again. So my name is Agnes, and today we are discussing a topic about equipping the young generation for career advancement. I'll be your moderator for today. I am an entrepreneur and currently an MBA student at USIU Africa, and I'm super passionate about the youth, and that's why I'm here today. I think part of solving problems is bringing like-minded people together and discussing solutions to societal problems. So knowledge and awareness is normally the first step. So we equip ourselves with that during these discussions, then go out to the world, do better and be better. I'd also like to thank our hosts, Ngamia Haulers Platform Limited, for this virtual event. The company Ngamia, in brief, is a technological outfit with various software products, Ngamia apps platform that connects consumers with service providers in the transport, logistics, production, and supply chain industry. Ngamia software innovators, engineers, and thought leaders in the industry using mobile and web tech platforms to facilitate different business models in the sector. Before I introduce our panelists for today, I'd like to cover a few housekeeping topics. Today's webinar is being recorded. We'll be able to share a link with you after the event, so you're more than welcome to revisit the content yourself, share it with friends and colleagues as well. We are also live on Facebook at the moment at Ngamia Africa. Please search us and feel free to check out us out there. And we invite your comments and questions during the webinar. You can use the Q&A chat box on your screen. And if you think of a question for the speakers at any point, just type it in there and I'll either pose it to our speakers at the time or hold it to a later time before the end of the event. And thank you to those who submit their questions. We will reach out. Now, without much further ado, I'd like to introduce our contributors of today. First of all, we have Pastor David Ewagata. Pastor David is passionate about young people, worship, discipleship, family, good humor, and leadership. He's currently the director of YHub Networks, the first of its kind, a one-stop youth ministry and resource center that aims to support youth and youth ministries across our city, nation, and beyond. He's also the pastor for children and youth ministry at Purpose Center Church. He's married to Pastor Rose Ewagata for 20 years, and together they have 3 children, Nathan, who's 15, Jeremy, who's 11, and Zoe, who's 7. David is a versatile and much sought after speaker in youth ministry circles and has experience in the church circles, theological circles, as well as serving as a missionary to Rwanda. Thank you so much, Pastor David, for joining us. Next, we have Eileen Wakesho Mogai, and Eileen is a land and property rights practitioner with keen interest on women's lands rights. Eileen previously served as Oxfam International Women's Lands Rights Advisor and has worked with Kenya Land Alliance, Development Policy Management Forum, and Kenya Institute of Public Policy Research and Analysis, focusing on women land rights, land governance, and land and conflicts. She has co-authored as well a peer-reviewed book on informal justice mechanisms and formal courts in Kenya and engagement with local communities, land and conflict. She has a Master's of Arts in degree in project planning and management from the University of Nairobi, and also a bachelor degree in communication. Thank you, Eileen, for joining us. We also have Jackson Righa, and Jackson is a director and a filmmaker at RJ Films before co-founding the company in August of 2020, that was last year. Jacob was a freelance media consultant providing photo, video, and live streaming solutions to individuals and corporates like ACCA, Global, World Fair Trade Organization, and Colombia, Africa. His expertise, solution-based approach, and leadership nurtured professional relationships that grew to start one of the region's most dynamic production houses. And prior to this, Jack was a marketing professional and has been actively involved in the marketing for global brands such as Subaru, Monroe, Out of Africa, Lipton Tea, amongst others. His portfolio is huge as well, and we'd like to welcome you to the discussion, Jackson. Lastly, we have Vivian, And Vivian is currently a customer service and civility consultant, a facilitator of ropes. This is rites of passage experience for transitioning teens at Rock Ministries. She's also a Sunday school teacher at Rock Ministries, which also airs every Sunday on K24. Vivian has a foot in child and teens counseling. She has served as a sales coordinator, a cabin crew instructor, a flight pursuer, and cabin crew for over 13 years. So we also welcome you, Vivian. Thank you so much. And that was a very long intro. So from now on, we're just going to have a normal conversation and let's just get comfortable, right? I'd want to start by discussing a little bit about the millennials, guys born between 81 and 96, who, in my opinion, grew up in a very tricky world age where technology was rising at a really fast rate. And out of it, we had a lot of information about following your passion. And Steve Jobs was really known for it. Follow your passion, finding what you love. And Pastor David, I'll start with you to begin with. Is finding what you love and doing it a good enough argument in our generation, especially in an African context, considering that jobs and resources are scarce? Is it something valuable? Is it a wise idea to push out?
Thank you, Agnes, and great to be here. Let me start by just saying, finding what you do is probably your biggest asset. What you love, rather. Finding what you love is your biggest asset. There is nothing that will replace what you are built for. There is nothing that can replace a key in opening doors. And so whether there's resources or no resources, I think your biggest task to break through in any field is to find what you're good at. If you hear the stories of each one of us, you will see us finding our roads, either by having to work to get into that place because we have to pay for it, or having to sacrifice. Sometimes we are in a place that we have been able to get to, education system allowed us to get a help loan, and we were able to go to a course, but that is not it. And I think literally all of us here as panelists are in that place where what you studied and what you're doing are different worlds. So I think find it by all means. It's your biggest asset.
First of all, Eileen, you studied communications and right now you're in a totally different field. And I think maybe you can start by walking us through your journey as to how you started, why you decided to take communications, and up to where you are now.
Thanks, Agnes. Good afternoon to everyone. Quite an interesting journey, I must say. Starting off as a communication specialist, my idea of why I ventured into that was, just the desire to be on TV and assuming that it's as swift as it sounds. And maybe because we owned a TV set quite, fairly late in life. And so the excitement of having interacted through the through the screen with anchors like Catherine Kasavuli then. So my concept about doing communications was really being able to, hopefully land on one of your TV screens. Fortunately, unfortunately, that wasn't to be. Once I finished my bachelor's in communications, my first assignment was in one of the faith-based organizations in Coast Province. And this faith-based organization focused on different things, from environmental justice to issues around education. And so you had an opportunity to be exposed to literally everything, which I think was an incredible thing for me. And so for 1 year, I crisscrossed the different themes, whether it's education, environment and land. And then after that, I, worked for a research institution to collect data, so fairly a fresh graduate, you're in the field to be able to collect data and understand the different dynamics. I originally come from cost. And so, just spending time connecting and reconnecting with some of the issues that are, important to where I come from and the people that, look like me, talk like me was, kind of my highlight. And so I spent, the following year in Kilifi. So that time it was Kilifi, I think it wasn't a county yet. And the whole research focused on land rights. And so I spent time in the villages, speaking to people, speaking to women, speaking to men, and just appreciating how complex land rights are for people, but more importantly for women, and just being able to connect with the burden that women carry as far as, at household level, and then realizing that land rights is not automatic. It's more of privilege. And you see that's really reflected on a lot of statistics about how much land is owned by women, not just in the country, but also in the region. And so that connection and my appetite for social justice really constantly pushed me to think through what is it that we must continue to do, if at all women and men have to have a fair space and a fair chance to be able to make critical decisions as far as land and property ownership is concerned. And because that ability to be able to own land is life-changing, whether it's socially, economically, but basic things as far as identity is concerned. And so that really began my journey for focusing on land and property ownership. And so, after that assignment came to an end, I had an opportunity to work with Kenya Land Alliance for about 5 years. And that now built clarity for me that the only thing that I want to do is focus on land and property rights with a very keen interest on the differential treatment between women and men. And I think that's what has been my story for the last 10 years now.
Sorry about that. So what I'm getting from this actually is experience matters. Getting out in the field and actually knowing, just experimenting with things, it helps you understand what you're good at, what you're attracted to, and what you love, yeah? Thanks for sharing. Jackson, yours is a different kind of story where you did marketing, but you have passion for film. I wanted to ask, first of all, where your passion for film, when did it begin? And also, we will touch on you being in the market industry. So can we start with your passion?
Oh yes, Agnes, tell you the truth, my passion evolved over years. I used to be the guy who used to draw on the text on the exercise books back when I was in primary school and campus, all the way to campus, to high school. But in the process of that, I knew I just wanted to be an artist. So I decided to be a tattoo artist. Then in the process of that, I realized there's something more more exciting. So I said, I came across graphic design and animation in my journey with artistry. I was like, wow, this is amazing. So now I can do graphics and I can do animation. Then in my journey with animation is when I came to realize there's something more than animation. There's something called film. And that's how I ended up in campus studying film. I wouldn't say that I knew it from start. With all honesty, I don't understand how, I don't see how people can grasp it from such a young age. I feel it's a journey, and we need to give people that leniency, especially young people, to grow and to nurture and to develop, because it takes shape, it takes character. The more exposure they get, the more things they interact with, it just develops. And that's my story. But how I ended up in marketing, now that's a different story. So I'm here, I'm pursuing film, and I get it, I want this thing. But suddenly I remember it was in campus, I couldn't get an internship in filming. So now I had to settle for what's there, and that was a digital marketing gig. And I went there and I learned the art of it. So in my pursuit, we had some in film, but what was available was a marketing internship. So I settled for it. And when I went there, I got to learn so much, and I got to see how I can infuse both now the journey I've been in, from graphic design to animation, to artistry, now to filmmaking, how I can now infuse it to marketing. And now I became a content creator for different marketing gigs, and it scaled up quick. I'll not lie to you, it scaled up quick. Right after campus, I'd learned some few, I'd created a demand for myself a bit. So now that's what I got into, marketing. But now it tended to take me farther away from film, because initially I was just a content creator, but everything is a journey. So now I started doing event organizing, started doing in-store activations, below the line activation, roadshows. When am I going to get time to start to hold a camera? So in my pursuit of that again, I scaled up. I got into international jobs, got into managerial positions, and I realized there was a gap. I said, "Sir, this is what I'm doing, and I like it, but it's not what fuels my day. It's not where my passion lies." So I had to find a way to get back to my passion. I had to save up, of course. I had to, I had to save up. I had to learn what I had to learn. And as soon as I could, I set up the investment and I started transitioning. I didn't skip. I didn't just start doing film all of a sudden. I started doing the transition back to filming, and here I am. I founded the company back in 2019, 2020.
Let's go to Vivian. Vivian, I know that you're a Sunday school teacher, and that way you're exposed to kids. And for me, what I've seen in the American system is that we have kids who start learning things like ballet at a very young age. We have kids who sing, and they're exposed to such an environment that allows their talent to grow. However, we're talking about an African setup. The context is different. And for me, I wanted to know, is there a way that we can raise kids to nurture their talent? Is it possible to nurture their talent from when they're young? And what does that framework look like?
Yes, it's very possible to nurture their talent from the time that they're very young. At the moment, Africa is really changing. A lot has changed. The children are not being raised like we were raised. Right now, parents are getting very interested and are beginning to understand that it's not just the white collar jobs that will pay your bills, or at times it's okay for a child to explore and earn from their talents. And we've seen people, for example, like Jackson. He went through the ropes and he did all that he did. By the end of the day, he's earning from his talent. So, but as African parents, currently, we need first to nurture the basic things in a child. We need to raise them as leaders first in themselves. Number one, we need to enable them to know who they are and just get them to understand themselves, their personality, their character, and that's from a tender age. Always affirm them. Try not to always criticize them. Try to look at what is so good about them. Shout out about what is so good about them. That will give them confidence. It will begin making them accept themselves and who they are. Then secondly, we also need to build character and discipline. A child cannot flourish if they're not disciplined and if they don't have good character. And that we really need to model it first ourselves. As parents, as teachers, as caregivers, we must show that character to them first. You know, children learn from what they see before they learn from what you say. Then after that, also, we need to encourage them to work just around the house. When they're little, encourage them to work and also to volunteer in doing stuff. That way, it helps them build proper work ethics within them. They learn how to do things and not wait for people to do for them, and just get to be involved in the things that are surrounding them. And they also learn to build connection with people when they volunteer. They learn to see things as they are in the society, and it gives them exposure. Then we also need to provide a proper structure for children. Yeah, we teach them how to schedule their days. We help them to rather we show them how to plan their time and manage it well. And then we also need to give them expectations, and then also teach them that there are consequences to expectations. Then after that is when we can encourage creativity. Now, by encouraging creativity, we help them to think outside the box. And as they think outside the box, children start exploring their gifts. They start exploring their talents. And some of the ways we can encourage creativity is giving them exposure. At times, we may need to go with them to places. We may need to encourage them to be around certain people. We may need to get even into the technology, which at times we fear. Yeah, we need to give them a lot of exposure. At times we may need to dig into our pockets and pay for them some training, some coaching, and it doesn't have to be long term. When you pay for them that training and coaching, you get to know whether they like or whether they can thrive in that area. And with time, you get to know whether your child is fit for something. And finally, you also need to allow them to fail and to fall. Yeah, when you allow them to fail and fall, they're able to know that they can actually move on from that failure bit. Yeah, and it's an opportunity to teach them. It's an opportunity for them to learn. Just like when we learn how to walk, there's a point where we fall and we fail. Yeah, and at that point is when we know what can we do better. So children at that point, they're able to know that I can move on past this thing. Once we've done all that, we should be able to observe these children and know what do they like, what do they thrive in, what makes them tick during the day when they're just doing their normal play, when they're moving around, what makes them interested, what makes them ask questions. Yeah, and that way we are able to begin telling what is inside of them. So yes, as African parents, we can change the narrative. They don't have to grow up like we did. We need to start exploring what they're good at. And the world has changed a lot. The world has changed. We cannot force who we are or what we want on them anymore. They are knowledgeable, they have exposure, they have information out there. So it's time for us to change and allow them to be and nurture their gifts and talents. But first of all, we have to nurture the basic things which can help them succeed in what they want to do. Yeah.
Thank you so much, because you've covered it in such an entirety. You've mentioned enable them to know who they are by affirming them, character and discipline. You've covered it in so much depth. And I think one thing that has caught me the most is allowing kids to fail. Because I think for us, there was such high standards. Be number 1, 2, or 3, period. Anything else you bring, you're a failure. And I think that stopped us from being creative and thinking outside the box. So I think that is very fundamental into this. So that brings me now to Pastor David. We have transitioned now from a child, and now we're going to teens, because you also work with teens. So how do we equip teens to now start stepping up now into their careers after high school? How does that look like?
Thank you. First of all, the teenage period of life is quite dynamic. By this time, you can be able to see most of their gifts and talents begin to present. Those who are into sciences, you can tell. Those who are into the arts, you can tell. Those who are into sports, you can tell. There are two challenges. One is what I call the paddock mentality of our system, where you put all these cows in a paddock, and there's a way in which they have to go into the deep and out on the other side. And depending on what the system takes you through, you have no choice. You're locked in and you get out. And this generation is, and the young people now are tired of that. We fitted in it because, there were not many choices. In fact, at one point in this life, you are either in a mainstream university or you are not in university. That was it. Yeah. Unless your parents were very wealthy, that's the only time you could be able to go out of the country. Universities like USIU popped up, and then others came up. They started become, most of these were colleges, tertiary colleges. And so the other one is the ranch mentality, and the young people are thinking like a ranch. They're saying, yes, this is what I'm good at, but what am I all about? And they're asking themselves question of purpose. Why, as you said, information is plentiful. They're not interacting with John Maxwell in school alone. They're not interacting with the minds of this world in a classroom setting where they're given it in a dose. They can be able to read about anyone and everyone. I have an 11-year-old who knows more about animals than I think I know even up to this point. Why? Because where I had to wait for a teacher to take me through a 40-minute lesson, he has access to hours of information. And so they have moved from the place where, this is how you take me through, to where I can see the whole field. I see what I want to graze. I see what I don't want to graze. I want to run and I want to be free. And that's the biggest challenge with many of our parents now. These kids have, I met a high school student. He's just graduated from high school and he had already set up 3 companies.
Wow.
Now that is confusing for the previous generations because you are supposed to find one thing and get stuck in it until we bury you. If you're a teacher, my mom was a teacher. Everyone calls her Mwalimu. She's taught for 50 years she's been teaching. And she did that from get-go. The only chance for her to grow in her career was to move from a school setting to become an administrator in a school, to move to the Ministry of Education and rise up the ranks. There was no living education. But now we have young people who are exploring each and everything. This guy is running a company for IT. He's still the same guy who is running a company for food. They're like, how do you move from food production to IT? It works. It works in their minds, and then they're also feeling, my son wants to play football and be a chef. How do you put those two in one table? But he's living in a ranch, so he can run in the field during the day, walk into his kitchen, put on his apron and serve dinner to special guests, and his hotel is only open for 2 hours every night. And he feels that will give him fulfillment. And so we have young people who want to be told, these are the possibilities. And that's why when I began, I said it very briefly. I said, you know what? Find your diamond. Find what you're best at. And that is what drives this generation. They will not sit in a classroom. One of my good friends walked into a classroom in one of the prestigious universities, sat in for a semester and said, this teacher is not helping me. Now, you think about your parents hearing such a statement from you, that a lecturer is not helping you in the most prestigious university. That's war. What kind of ego is that? And for sure, she's a brilliant mind. And she started her own company because she was like, I'm wasting time sitting here listening to stuff I can listen to on YouTube while I run my company. And so we have to realize that this generation is moving so fast. We need to be able to give them parameters to be able to keep them from losing it, because these guys can run 5 companies that are go, forget about family, forget about values, forget about their faith, forget about community, and just be lost in this world. And so what Vivian has mentioned to us is basically just picking different facets of this young person's life and making sure all of them are growing incrementally, so that one side is not strong and the other side is lopsided. One side is not doing well and the other side they're grieving. And we have lots of cases of suicide, depression by brilliant, brilliant minds. People who have achieved more in half their life than we will ever achieve in our full life, because it does not satisfy. Getting that wealth, getting those accolades of having started up a company at 18 do not satisfy the innate needs of a human being. And so for us, as people who are dealing with those young guys who are leaving high school, is to sit down with them and say, listen, you are a 360-degree human being. You have a spiritual life, you have a social life, you have an emotional life, you have an academic life, you have a financial life, you have a moral life, and all this, the only way you can, the word shalom means complete wholeness. It means being well in every aspect. You cannot be happy because you are the CEO of a bank when your child is in drugs and addicted completely and cannot even, you can't even keep a spoon outside a closed drawer because they will sell it to buy drugs. You can't be happy. And so finding them the space to be able to explore. One of the programs we started at the university, Park University, was a discipleship program to help guys develop their understanding of who they are, deepen their relationship with God, and direct them in their careers. So the 3 Ds, deepen, develop, and direct. Why? Because we realize these guys finish high school and their problem is not, their parents are more resourced than our parents were. So their problem is not resource, even though we are saying Africa is much, not as equipped financially to do all these things. Their problem is not resource. 2, their problem is not talent. They have explored so many talents. How I discovered that I'm an artist is that a friend of mine left me with a brush and paint. And I started painting and I realized I'm good at it. I started playing instruments. I realized I'm good at them. I sang. I realized I'm good at it. I started preaching. I realized I'm good at preaching. I am a lecturer, and I realized I have 17 different things I can be good at. What on earth do I do? And so we need to be able to put these guys and direct them, because in this ranch, they can be so lost and so wounded, yet so successful.
So what I'm getting is that this generation is very unapologetic about who they are. They know their talents and they go for it. So the disadvantage to that is that they can be focused on just one thing, that they actually forget other things, which are also important, at least for your health, you know, because socially you do need to interact with people, you know, that it increases your health. At least it's said that people who are not lonely live longer. So maybe that is the place that we need to direct them on, not necessarily career path. Eileen, back to you. I wanted to ask, for you, how do you think, let's start a little bit about the education system. For you, how do you feel it can be done better so that kids can actually turn out better? Let's talk about the 844 system, which now has transitioned into something else. How can it be made better for younger guys?
Thanks, Agnes. So it's very interesting listening to, you know, David, Jackson, and Vivian speak about the different, you know, sort of ideas and vision about this particular generation. And, you know, I think David's son is living my ideal life, you know. In my other world, I would, you know, spend time in a ranch maybe and get in the kitchen and cook. But just reflecting on the education system and being a product of, I think, you know, the 844 system, I grapple a lot thinking through what I would have changed within this current system. Maybe because I am the kind of person that trusts the process. You know, I didn't go through you know, a path where I was mentored, and that's why, you know, my idea of what I wanted to be was, you know, was sort of mentored through this particular screen, and just, you know, just being able to trust through the process and appreciating that no space goes, you know, gets wasted. And so I listened to Righa speak about the nexus between, you know, his film work today and his marketing, you know, studying, and I see a lot of, you know, the two complement each other. And so if you think that maybe if Righa had particular, maybe greater exposure at Braeburn, that maybe his passion, his vision of what he wanted to do would have been more clear, maybe not. And so for me, I think we must be able to, you know, focus on the process as much as we equally must focus on the outcome. And so whether it's the 844 system or is the competence-based curriculum, I think being able to trust what the process is able to do then makes us, kind of determines how we turn out in terms of the outcome. Clarity is developed over time. And so not everybody would have the same exposure that, you know, children who go to Brookhouse have. But all the same, if we focus on what the power of the process, then the outcome might be, you know, better for people who went to, you know, primary schools that are used for polling stations like myself, to those that went to group of schools, like maybe Jackson, you know. But I think my firm belief is really trusting on the process, and no experience is wasted. So whether we had level of exposure in primary, in high school, or whether we got it fairly late, like myself, I did geography, but had very limited experience in what this continent or the globe looks like. And so when I started to travel in 2010, I think 2010, 2011 was my first experience traveling out of the country. And between 2010 to date, I think I have done more than 40 countries, both working and traveling, mostly for work. And so my view, of course, I have a lot of aha moments because I started traveling when I'm of age. There is not the same exposure that those that had a privilege to travel early. but then focus on the outcome. We turned all okay. And so I think just being able to focus on the process regardless of the system would give us fairly good output at the end of the day.
Thanks for that. Jackson, this is where you come in, because Eileen has talked about trusting the process. You trusted the process because you weren't able to secure an internship while you're doing film. You secured an internship in marketing. Steve Jobs always talked about something to do with always connecting the dots looking back. And for me, I'd like you to connect the dots for us in terms of your marketing journey. How has that helped you in where you are right now?
Yes.
Oh no, I think we're losing Jackson again.
Of just trusting the process, going through marketing and being exposed to a totally different dynamic that I was so ill prepared for, a dynamic that is very rapidly changing, constantly revolving on. It's just very dynamic. The marketing industry usually say, if you're going to be in marketing for more than 10 years, you better have 2 lifetimes. It's tedious. Nonetheless, I'm very grateful for it. For example, one of the things I got to know quite earlier on while in marketing about content production and filmmaking, that's what I do, is just seeing it from the from a different perspective. For example, filmmakers are very talented people, and when we're talking about a young generation, this young generation is full of many talents, but talent isn't simple. Just because I can do something doesn't sell it. We need to be able to see from the other perspective of how do I use this talent to benefit a business, an organization? How do I use this talent to grow my brand? So I got to see from that perspective, from the end of it. So now I used to be in marketing, but engaging a lot of content creators to create content that have to meet certain targets. It has to be measured. It has to be effective in a certain way. It had to come in a different way. So now coming from that background, now coming to start my own organization, it's easy for me to gel with a lot of corporates and their likes, because I understand their needs. I understand where they want to grow. I understand their language. Compared to having left campus and just started straight into filmmaking, and when you mention persons like Steve Jobs and the likes, I remember an interesting scenario that happened in Steve Jobs' life, where somebody came and questioned him. Somebody came from his organization and questioned him, asking him, what does he do? He does not develop the products. He does not sell the products. He just exists, and somehow this company is running on him. What does he do? And he said, a lot of people play the instruments. I play the orchestra. It's talent is knowing how to do a particular thing, or knowing how to do a specific kind of activity. But how it gels with the community, how it gels with your purpose, how it gels with your goal, is what I can say we have to learn through the school of life, and we have to be exposed to see how to all bring it back home. One of the things I also learned was about packaging and branding. It's it's easy to create content. It's easy to create what you love, but how do you sell it? How do you sell it? So if we just to be honest with ourselves, our passion is usually the core, it's the engine, but how to make it relevant in our generation, in our scenarios, we have to go the extra mile and pick up these things. You see, it's like going to town for CBD, for instance. That's the passion, that's the end goal, but there are different routes I can use to get there, and it's about weighing in on what I need to pick up, such that by the time I end up in my end destination, I don't have to go back and start the journey again because I forgot something. I have to come equipped. And I feel like, just answering to your question, I feel like hadn't I gone through the process, if I hadn't trusted the process, then I'd be ill-equipped to sustain my passion.
All right. then let me now actually put it open to everybody, all of our panelists. There are those young people who fear, and we live in a social media age where people are keeping up with the Joneses, and people are, I'm going to do this because somebody else is doing it. And not necessarily because you love it, but because of chasing money and chasing fame, quote unquote. What can you advise the person who's going through that? How do they get to the right mindset so that they can also start developing themselves at what they're good at and not just what other people are doing?
All right. If I may just respond on that, I believe that a wise man has many fathers and mothers. A fool dies an orphan. It is important to seek mentorship. It is important to acquire knowledge. Don't be a lone ranger. Chances are you're not the first person with that idea. You might not even be the first person to execute it. A lot of people might have gone before you and failed. So it's about seeking the necessary mentorship, seeking the necessary exposure. Do not be limited by your resources. There's a man I like to quote, it's called Ernest Wamboy. He says, you might have somebody to blame for where you are right now, but you'll not have anyone to blame for where you will be. So it's up to you to take the necessary steps and realize and see how to seek the knowledge that you need, the resources that you need, the endorsement that you need, and achieve your purpose, your vision, your goal, your dream, because it is yours. But also as parents and as teachers, I feel like we need to be able to come in the moments of transitions. As Vivian explained earlier, there's so much that is happening, there's so much growth that happens in somebody's life. But the point they end up to become, say, I want to become this as a career, as a profession. There's so many moments of transitions that we need to come in and help guide our young generations. I feel like if maybe the campus or the university that I went to, if they help me transition to that internship, they help me to transition to a more preferred or most ideal work area after campus, maybe things will have come out differently. I might not have needed to do, yes, as much as I trusted the process, need to spend that much out there, trusting the process. Maybe things will have worked, I'll have come up to where I am much sooner. But nonetheless, I feel like we need to consult and acquire the knowledge that we need to have, so that we may be able to actualize our passions and our dreams.
Yeah, I agree with you. Thanks for that. Vivian, I have
Yes.
a question actually from Kimberly, which I think you can tackle well as a counselor.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
she talks about being in uni, because most of people are in uni and it's an explorative stage for a lot. And in the process, you just do a course, as the way someone says, for the sake of doing it, or your parents have sent you to do it. But then she talks about in the journey, you finally find an idea of what you really want to do in your lifetime, but you don't have the chance to do it anymore. So by the time you're completing campus, you feel like you are wasted. I'd like for you to speak life into her, because I know there's so much more, but
Yeah.
what can be the comeback to that?
Wow, I love that question, because I'm a typical example of someone who did a degree of something I ended up not doing. But I don't know what you mean by there's no chance for doing what you wanted to do. For me, it's been a journey. I actually did something else after campus. I became a cabin crew, and that season for me ended. And recently, I learned how to be a teacher. And I can never say it's too late unless what you want to do has an age limit. And I want to believe immediately after campus, it's not a place where you have an age limit. And just like, I'll go back also to Jackson, who is with us. Just like Jackson did what he did, and he used it to propel him to the next that he wanted to do. That's actually a route that someone can take. At times it's difficult to even fight with our parents, especially our generation. It was difficult when they say you do this, you do this. You become a lawyer, you become a lawyer. You become a doctor, you become a doctor for as long as your grades allow. But then in that process, you earn enough, you become independent, and you even now make your own decisions on exactly what you want to do. As a cabin crew, I found dentists who became pilots. They always desired to become a pilot. And in the process of being a dentist, yes, they did all those. I can imagine the number of years they studied, but it was never a waste. It was an experience. There's a life he changed by doing just what he did. Life is never a waste, but then you use it as a stepping stone to take you to your next level. I'll use another example of, I have a younger sister who scored A's and she went into med school. Fortunately, she got an opportunity to change her career. She loved what she was doing, but she was not passionate enough. And she went through many changes in life. She did a bit of piloting. After that, she went and worked in an organization as a customer experience person. And recently, she's not young, very recently, she actually discovered her area is computer science, and she's a very good programmer. And that one she discovered when she was working with a group of IT guys, when she's as a customer experience person. So that way she was able to now focus and realize, this is what I really want to be. This is who I need to be. And she's not young. That one I can assure you, but she's beginning her uni soon. So it's never too late. In life, we go through a lot of changes, and these changes are supposed to be stepping stones. And at times, I believe by the time now you actually get into really what you really want to do after going through such a long process, you have experience, you have a lot of wisdom that comes with you, and you're able to use it even where you begin your new journey. So I will tell you that it's never too late to do anything, unless whatever you wanted to do has an age limit. Otherwise, go for it. Life is an experience. Experience it. It's a journey. Enjoy every stage. You can always start over again wherever you are. It's never too late to start anything. I've been reading about women who okay, this is about maybe body life issues. They had weight issues till 50 something, 60 something. Then they became bodybuilders at 60. So it's never too late to begin something. Enjoy this ride, enjoy this journey, go where it's taking you, for as long as you do it carefully and prayerfully, and don't be afraid to fail and start again. Fail and start again. Yeah, people are failing and starting again. There's some people who started organizations, great companies in their 50s. So it's never too late.
Yeah, thank you. Pastor David, please, I'd like you to comment a little bit on doing things afraid, because there are times, like, even in, I'd not like to assume, but maybe just think around what Kimberly is saying, is that sometimes we get to a point and we say it feels like a dead end and there's nothing more. But I feel like at that point, that's where courage steps in. That's where boldness steps in. Perhaps, and this is also a mindset kind of frame that we need to discuss. What can you say about being bold while chasing your ideas, your dreams? Because you've spoken about 18-year-olds who are running 3 companies. That person is very bold, you know? How can we get to that level of mindset so that even when we feel like we're hitting a wall, we can actually break through it?
Yeah, amazing. I think courage is by no opportunity or chance one of the biggest things we need for life. It takes courage just to date a lady. takes courage, because there's a chance you'll be told X, so it takes courage to be able to choose what you want to do. It takes courage to be able to step out and be number one. In fact, I think the most courageous people are those who have been number one and have to stay there, because now the pressure is on you. Your parents are like, you cannot be number two. You're always number one. And so it takes courage to be brilliant, the same way it takes courage to be back there in the line. A couple of things that I would say, and look at the aspect of what are our parents teaching the children? What are you as a parent giving your children? Are you teaching them to be courageous, or are you teaching them to conform? Because at this point, they may be conforming to you because you're a good parent who has good plans for them. But at another point, somebody else will use the same principle you've applied into their lives to make them do the wrong thing. Somebody else, because they're conformers. You walk into a place and, fit into the mold. You want to do medicine, but no, you're going to be an architect because our family is architects. And so the moment you start pushing them to conform by hook or crook, they learn that in this life, it's about conforming. Sometimes it's the teachers who do that. Say, you're a science student, you are an A student in sciences, forget about this art, study, pursue this. And the person knows for sure the day I see blood, I will collapse. But because the teacher said you are a medicine student, you're a doctor in the making because of your brains. And you've never learned to challenge and ask yourself, why am I here? And what do I want in it? Then you end up just conforming. The next time it will be drugs. The next time it will be something else. So are we teaching our children and our students or our brothers and sisters to conform by the way we apply ourselves and insist on the things they want to do? Secondly, apart from teaching them to conform, are we also challenging them to be creative? I think it's Tangen Demo or who said, if you give 100,000 shillings to a Kenyan, this is the line of business I can tell you they will do. If you give 1 million shillings to a Kenyan, this is the line of business they will do. We have no innovation. We have no creativity. And guess what? That is what our education system has been about. It's been about producing workers. You only know how to tie the screw in one corner of an engine. You don't know anything about the rest of the engine. So even if you work in an engineering company for 70 years, you will never be able to make an engine. While on the other hand, the Japanese are teaching their children to make computers by primary school, to make phones, to make apps, to make watches. Why? Because they're saying, you know what, you can't have 100 smoky joints on the street. If guys are making smokies, you make something else, make a pizza, make a sandwich that is unknown, put something else in it that nobody else has. And so we have also been taught to toe the line. Creativity is not rewarded. Innovation is not rewarded. To this day, the guy who developed M-Pesa is in the darkness.
Yep. Why?
Because our government does not support innovation, world-changing innovations. We don't have a name to a Kenyan who developed that thing. And apparently here we pay a foreign company to the royalties for it. Why? Because we just don't celebrate that. And so when our children say, I want to do something that nobody else has done, the first response is shut them down. We don't do this here, And so we do not have innovators. We do not have people who are thinking outside the box. We do not have a think tank for such. And so we need to be able to allow these guys to explore. And I say this knowing that we may not have the resources, but look at where the biggest innovations of our century were found. School dropouts in the basements of their houses with little or no capital. That's where Microsoft was born. That is where iPhone was born. Some of the biggest names you talk about did not have the coins. We did not have the coins to make that business start. They had an idea. They had a passion, they had a dream. And I say this at the beginning. And if you remember me for anything, or if you remember me for anything, just remember this. Find your diamond. Find what you are made of. The resources, the support, the doors will fling open for that person. who finds what their thing is. It doesn't matter how many odds are against you. When you find it, they will reward you. And let me tell you, you can be paid as a doctor in a hospital and be paid well and live a great life. But you might be tucking behind you some of the biggest innovations of this life. But because you're comfortable, and I want to speak about something else, because many times when you talk about discovering what we are all about and doing exploits, we're always thinking about the resources that we can find after doing this. And some of us are handicapped by the resources we have. Because you could go to that school, you could be paid for fees to do that thing, you found it, you get a good salary out of it, you forget your dream. Some of the greatest musicians are sitting behind CEO offices in the city, and they are wondering why all the money is not satisfying them. Some of the greatest poets. And you will notice this, you will see some guys, when you hear their story, you're like, what? You are a CEO for how long? You are doing this for how long? That's Jackson. Saying, you know what, I could have been sitting behind that desk doing my marketing. But then he knows it's film. And you don't, I wait to see how far this will take him, because he has landed on his feet. He can drive that car with his eyes closed, because that is his thing. But he could do many other things. He's amazing. I mean, just listening to Jackson talk about, understanding the market, knowing about how to package and brand your thing. I'm like, dude, just give me your brains and then go for film. I need to understand this part. But he has done that well. But there is something that the world will bow in front of him because.
Pastor David, allow me to interject at that point. You said something, let me just trace back a little bit, where you said that innovation, we don't have enough innovators, but it's because systems do not allow for that to happen. Not our government, not our society. So Brian talks about having younger siblings. It's difficult in Nairobi. It's very hard. Nairobi is big and small at the same time. Getting jobs is very difficult. It doesn't help for innovators to be innovators. How do we ensure that we are teaching people to go the right track? Because I don't know. It's very difficult, because even the examples I would give of people who've made it are in the American system, Do we have knowledge about the home system where people have actually pursued and created new journeys? And is that possible? How can someone help their younger siblings to make better decisions about what they need to do? What's the line between passion and also reality as well?
Reality.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's a common question, actually, a very common question, because we are always thinking the short goal. This is how to get there quickly. Unfortunately, that is what shortchanges us often. And Pastor is an entrepreneur. He's in fintech, Pastor Julian, in Papa Center, and brilliant, and has probably built one of the biggest companies we know of. I know of. And if you hear him talk, he'll say, Kenya does not have patient money. People don't want to invest on you for 10 years. Somebody will give Jackson 10 million shillings to start off his studio and expect returns by April 15th. All right? We do the same thing with our children. We expect them to take the shortest route to a salary, shortest route to their business being established and starting to run. But what does that mean? It means start a smoky shop, because that has been tried, tested, and proven. The other route is to go the long route of saying, let me discover. Very few of us in fact, our education system, I'll say this again, our education system, our government, our parents, because they are all together, either some of us, our parents are the president, some of us, our parents are as a teacher, minister of education, some of us, our parents are a lecturer in a school. All this together, do not think in terms of, let him take the long route, but let him get there. I understand that there's a cost to it. I was called to ministry at a very young age. When I was called to ministry, I was a top student in my school in graphic design. I did graphic art and design as well, like Jackson. I was a top student in my college. When I told my lecturer, when I was doing my final exam, that I'm going into ministry, These are the words he told me. You are a fool. And let me tell you the funniest thing. We were good friends with him. He would walk across the classroom, see me doing my project, and when our eyes meet, he would just, mouth out the words, a fool. Wow. He said it from different sides of the classroom. And I know what he was saying because that was at the breaking point of the creative industry. I would be amongst the top creatives in this country. I would be earning 6-figure salary or more. But I knew by the time I was in my 3rd year doing graphic design that God has called me to ministry, right? Now, I could look, if somebody looked at it and said financial sense is what is sense, then they would look at it and say, David, you missed the boat. But then through ministry, I've been able to equip young people who have understood their purposes. I've been able to minister not just in this country, but beyond the borders of this country. I have seen lives change. I've seen wrecks being brought back to, soberness. I don't think in all my creative years, I would be able to impact as many lives as I have. Okay? Mm-hmm. Does it pay me? Not as much, but I'm able to meet my demands and my everyday needs. And so we have to also tell our children, it's not always about the money, it's the impact, it's the influence you leave. There are people who will make that money and people will wince every time you show up in that office because they know it is trouble. This guy wants his profits by hook or by crook. And so that's what I would say. And I understand again what you say, people will take the short route. But we are taking the short route severally, even as a nation, even as a continent. We are always taking the short route. No wonder we are still 3rd world. We are not ready to pay the price to innovate and develop, like what India did, like what Singapore did, like what South Korea did. We're not ready to take the long route and say, guys, let's build ours and let's get out of this thing of buying everything, including toothpicks, from another country.
Yeah. I got it. Got it. Eileen, let's talk about realigning your career while in school. How would you advise one to just be able to shape themselves to their career while they're still in school?
Thanks, Agnes, and thanks for having this conversation. It's very interesting to just listen to perspectives from the other panelists. Every time when I think through people that are in school, one of the things that I would ask is what is in your hands? Because that which is in your hands is that which you have. That which you desire is an aspiration, but there's power in starting with that which you have. There's also a lot of power with starting, even as you build clarity about what you want, which takes a bit of time. I was interacting with students over the weekend through some mentorship program that I do together with others back in the village. And this particular student tells me, I have 4 areas that I want to pursue. I feel like I want to be a doctor, but I also want to do fashion design, but I also want to, a couple of other things that they want to pursue. You see, that lack of clarity is not a problem because over time, then you'll build that clarity. But the power of, beginning and enjoying that moment within which you are in that particular phase or stage. I'm seeing some of the comments around, if you pursue a course and you lose time, I think being able to see every opportunity as important in defining your next step or a step towards directing you to where you want to move is extremely important. And so throughout that school life, enjoy school life, build clarity on your vision, regardless of how long it takes. Focus on that which you have. If it's high level of exposure, fair enough. If it's low, fair enough. That which you have is that which you have to start with. I think read as much as possible. Besides just focusing on academics, I think there's power in being able to get exposed. We travel through books. We travel through newspaper articles and so on and so forth. So just that ability to be able to also be able to read beyond your primary books gives you an opportunity to be able to interact with certain aspects that might be important in shaping up that which you desire to be. And so, for me is really being able to enjoy the process, embrace it, do not dismiss any space and any opportunity that you have, regardless of how it looks like or how it's dressed. Embrace it and enjoy it.
I think one thing that we forget to do is actually enjoy life, because we're stuck in the moment, we're stuck in doing something and getting to something and just not enjoying the little things, the opportunities that come our way. Yeah. To Jackson, I'd like to know a little bit about, or rather a lot more about networking and how it's so fundamental in your career growth. Any tips on how to network properly, especially from a person who's in their younger 20s and approaching someone who's advanced in their career? How do they approach that? How do they approach people to mentor them as well?
Thanks, Agnes. Well, I'll echo what Eileen has said. Starting with the question, why do we go to school? Is it just education alone? You know, because I feel like when I went to campus, beyond education, I got to really interact a lot with people, different dynamics, different ethnic faiths, different age brackets. And this really enabled me to be able to interact with all this diversity of people, and that's life. You know, for a person who's younger 20s looking to see how he can get to approach both mentors, corporates, and the likes, it starts with a place. And I feel like there's no better place than school. You know, being able to discuss among group mates, be able to talk to your lecturers beyond the class settings, be able to engage on a project and try to do it the best you can, so that you can present it. I feel that's where it all starts. And beyond the academia, beyond the results, I feel school is the best place to interact and to build your social skills, your people skills, so that these are the things that you carry on over to life, to the career in industry and the likes. So it starts from there. With all honesty, it starts from there. And if persons, because I've seen in the comments somebody's asking, when is it time to call it quits, especially in school? I look at, you're in school for how long, and how long will you do life? There's so much. Is there that urgency? If you feel you have something that you're doing that needs you to leave school to do it, what's that? Have you talked to God? When are you dying? You're dying how soon? I feel there has to be uh, a lot more value that has to be discussed when it comes to going to school, to campus and the likes. Sure, you have something that you feel needs to get to that next level, and fine, you don't have the resources as per you, and you're looking for avenues to do this mega thing, to get the audience of certain kind of people, or get your idea to a certain level of a certain platform or in a certain circle of people, and you want to get there. It also you have this idea, fine, but how do you nurture it to that place? It requires time, it requires process. And if you're thinking of dropping out school to do this thing, I'll tell you to slow down, get your papers right. There's a lot more endorsement that comes with somebody you can reason with. You have a great idea, but are you able to execute it? I have to look at what background you have, what form of, what background you have, what have you done thus far with your idea? Nobody invests 10 million in a business that's not inexistent. You just have an idea. So I encourage people, if you're looking to get any form of endorsement or any form of backing up, either financially, mentorship by persons, industry collaborators, persons who are already there, you need to prep yourself, work on yourself, work on your capacity. I had somebody echo Reverend Julian Kuna. That man is a giant, but that person has a lot of capacity, internal capacity, to be able um, to sustain such big corporates and still be in ministry. So what's this that's requiring you to drop school? Work on your internal capacity, build this relationship with industry colleagues. I believe the persons you are in, maybe in campus, or persons you're in with the school, this will be the next generation leaders, you know. So if you leave this circle of friends to go for the person who's retiring in the next 2 years, what good will it do for you, you know? But it's good to grow with industry colleagues. So these are the persons you'll interact with and network with. Beyond that, I'd say read your books, man. Watch those YouTube videos. School of YouTube has graduated many persons. You know, increase your knowledge, grow as an individual. Practice other things beyond. Practice your managerial skills. Practice your business skills. Practice your communication skills. Develop these skills. These are the things that will come together to pitch your idea, you know. Persons, there are very few successful dropouts. Yes, they're there, and we know them, and they have made an impact. But in the top 100 billionaires, they're probably like 4. All right. So you have a higher chance to be an educated billionaire than to be a dropout. All right. So you do your part. Keep beyond that. Develop your people skills. Know how to interact with people. Be considerate. Know how to interact with people in different forums. The elderly, the young, persons, the rich, the political. Learn how to manage people. Learn how to interact with different people, because at the end of the day, the only thing money can't buy is people, you know, and you need people. People can do things money can't do for you. All right. And yeah, that's it for me, Agnes.
Jackson, thank you so much. I love what you've touched on, that out of many dropouts, we have not seen failures, because those failures are never covered. The only success stories that are covered, and it's quite a few percentage, you know. And it's not to discourage, but just to say that this is what realistically happens. And also the fact that we need to take a proactive approach as youths, instead of having to make other people do things for us, but be proactive about our future and being intentional about our future. That's what I've grasped from that. Thank you for it. Let's just move a little bit to the parents' side, and I'll start with Vivian. I'd like to know right now, are our parents proactive, or are they reactive into now shaping the generations that are coming? And what role should they play?
In my observation, most parents have been reactive. We've been very dormant in our children's lives when it comes to guiding them, when it comes to getting involved with their lives, career, and what they're doing and what they want to do. We've basically, in many ways, taken shortcuts, the short route, where we send them to school, the teacher's problem. I wait for, if they've done anything wrong, I probably want to correct it. Or at times I don't even have time to correct, until the pandemic. When the pandemic happened, I believe it really changed many of us as parents, because we were forced to be part of our children's lives, our children's learning, and what they're doing. And even in the process, when in my counseling sessions during that period, I had a number of teens who really clashed with their parents. And one of the things is that they were saying, I've always been like this, but my parents don't know I am like this. So now they're discovering who I am. And that means we've really been taking a passive role in our children's lives, in who they are, in their growth. It's very important to be very proactive in our children's lives, get involved. One of the things that involvement does is that it brings confidence, number one. You know, our children pick up from us as parents and caregivers first, then the teachers, then anyone else in their lives, future lives. So the moment we are involved, we are able to tell who they really are, become their biggest cheerleaders, build on their confidence, make them feel accepted. And that way they're able to come out, explore, show you what they've got because they know you're interested. And at that point, you're also able to know, what can I do to grow this child? And how do I guide them before I start punishing them for things they've done, but I've not taught them how to do it. I've not been there to set an example for them. Yet once they do something so wrong or they go the wrong way, I'm ready to punish, I'm ready to scold them, I'm very quick to judge them and criticize them. So as parents, we really need to be very involved in our children's lives. If they're in school, follow up with the teachers, get to know what they're doing, get to know how they're doing, get to know what are they good at, because they spend a long time with the teacher. Find out, what have you observed? Talk to your child as well, communicate with them, just discover them, ask them prodding questions. What did you do in school today? Did your teacher like your assignment? Yeah, who did you interact with today? Find out about their friends, get involved with their friends, just to know who they are, and that way you'll discover who your child really is. Personally, I got to discover my child's leadership skills by just interacting with her and her friends and just getting to know how does she handle them. And that way you're also able to guide them to know how to relate with people and also bring out their gifts. But the moment you're not there, other people will guide and misguide them. Yeah, and then we'll be left reacting. Yeah, so it's right now we are not very proactive, but we need to take a proactive role in our children's life. Very important.
And even just to get back to that, there's kids are in different stages. So what happens, what can you tell to a parent who has a 20-plus-year-old who's in university, who has said, I'm doing this course, I don't like it, I want to do this other thing. How would you advise them to approach their children? How should they talk to them? And what kind of support should they give them?
Number one is to hear them out. Yeah, it's very important not to impose your career choice to your child. Show them you're interested in hearing them out. Then you can also guide them in options, because there's the, like we've shared, there's the passion side of it and there's the reality side of it. So share with them the reality of things in the world. Share with them, for example, if someone wants to get into a certain industry, you can encourage them. Yes, you can get in, I'll support you, but then why don't you finish up this other thing if you know it's going to benefit them, not if you know it's you imposing yourself on them. But if you know they can succeed in this other thing that they want to do, it's very important to support them, allow them to try and fail. And at times that can be expensive on your side. If you can afford to do something and probably at some point move on to something else, that's fine. On the other hand, you can also put you can give them conditions for, if I support you in this, then this is what I expect, probably the outcome, because this is my financial capability, or this is what I can manage to do. So you sit at the table and negotiate with them. Let them see the bigger picture, but at the end of the day, hear them out. They may have a bigger point. Yeah, we are not the know-it-alls. We've experienced a lot, but just get to have that discussion. Remember, a 20-year-old is basically independent from you. Emotionally, mentally, physically, maybe they're just dependent on you financially, but the emotional and mental changes that they've gone through require them to actually make decisions. So you can't always make decisions for them. And at that point, when you really decide to make that decision for them, when they face the world, they'll not be confident beings. If you've not sat them down and negotiated with them, they'll always feel and think their opinion does not matter. So when they even move to the corporate world or they move on to something they want to do, they lack confidence. They'll not put themselves out there. Why? Because they were never heard. Even in their adulthood, they were never heard. So very important, have that discussion with them. Give them the conditions, tell them, talk about the consequences, and if they're willing. And just let it not just be you imposing what you want on them. Thank you.
Thank you as well. Jackson, a little bit about following passion. For me, I'd like to ask, what's the consequence of not following what you're good at?
There's so much you can get depressing, we seldomly get to do or perform well in things that we are not passionate about. You can do it for the sake of money. You can do something for the sake of your parents or to make somebody proud. But if you're not doing something that you're passionate about, it's sooner or later you will crash. Think about a tree that has lacked its water supply. It will still be green. The next couple of days it will still be green, but sooner or later it will dry up, it will wither. That's the story of anyone without a passion, anyone who does not find fulfillment or life in what they do, and your performance is severely affected. Yes, performance severely affected. You're not as passionate to get out of bed because what you're going to do is not something you're going to enjoy. But the inverse side is also very true. You'll be excited to get out of bed and go do what you want to, what you love doing. There's nothing, if you do what you love and somebody's paying you to do it, you're being paid to do what you love. So it's more exciting. Creativity prospers, blossoms. You find even it's easier for you to scale up and grow whatever it is that you're working on. Yeah.
All right. Eileen, I have a question for you, and this is relation to your career as well. For, again, a 20-year-old who has discovered in their uni that this is what they want to do, what's the right way to approach a parent? How do you talk to a parent? How do you tell them this is what I want to do, and tell them in a respectful manner that I'm thinking of doing this?
That's a very interesting question, Agnes. For many parents, their only hope of them doing that which they were unable to do is sometimes through their children. And I remember my mother, who is a teacher, I think like David, if I'm not wrong, her vision of me was really me getting into teaching. And I remember just after I finished school, she ensured that I got admission. I think it was, I can't remember whether Moi or Egerton to do education, because for her, and she would speak to me, the times, things are spoken to you and you really see yourself into it. And so she would tell me, my daughter, I see you, teaching so well, you're very articulate on certain things and you make such a good teacher. And for sure, the thought of teaching for me was outrightly a no, not because I cannot teach. I mean, I spend time nowadays teaching at a different level. But the clarity I had about teaching, I was very sure that that is not what I wanted to do. And, so we had this conversation about me not wanting to pursue teaching. And because, as I mentioned, like my idea about pursuing mass communication seemed clear to me at that particular moment because of my interaction with the television. I had this conversation with my mother about, even though I wouldn't teach in a classroom, how I would focus sharing news would be a way that allows me to teach. And so I connected her to be able to see that even though I would not go through teaching as she envisioned it, that I would still be able to get an opportunity to teach through a different platform. Of course, building a compromise, as you rightfully say, Agnes, has to be in a very respectful way, because there is no parent who doesn't desire or want the best for their children. It's just the how that is different. And so being able to create an environment that allows for dialogue and working with our parent, because there's wisdom that they have that we might not have. We have a common Swahili saying, says that when an elderly man sees far than when we young people standing. And so being able to equally tap on their wisdom and their guidance becomes very important. And so let's have conversation with our parents. I think this is both for these 20-year-olds, but also for our parents, so that they equally create a safe space to have that discussion on some of the things that, our children, our young siblings want to pursue, and then build compromise based on good guidance.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. Pastor David, I'll actually pose the same question to you from a parent's perspective as well. How is it that a son or a daughter should approach you and tell you, this is what I want to do? Where does that conversation come from? And I'm looking at it from a perspective of a parent who's very tough, is set in his ways, is living his life through his children. How do you have conversation with such a parent? How do you express yourself? Thank
you, Agnes. I think it better come with his check ready for all the school fees. Anyway, I think one is just to be able to, I love what Eileen has said in terms of understanding that your parents sees far. In as much as they may be seated, they may not be techie, they may not understand how to get to their WhatsApp and delete a message, but they see far. And so balancing between the wisdom of age and the passion of youth is a critical thing to do. One of my good friends, and I'll use example, one of my good friends didn't want to do medicine, but the father believed he has raised a doctor. And so she did her Form 4 and got an A-, and the parent took him back to school. He got a second A-. The parent took her to Paradise, sacrificed all he could, put her through a harrowing experience, because literally, being taken back to Form 4 after getting an A- is not child's play. We literally had to walk with her through that year, visit her in school and just encourage her to carry on. In fact, we went even including my mom to just go and encourage her, because we've been family friends for many years. And the father would, comfortably, he's a good friend of ours, and he's like, yeah, I hear you, I hear that she has her passions, but for me, this is going to happen. And so she went through her 6 years of School of Medicine. And, the first 2 or 3 years, she was like, I'm doing this degree. When I finish, I'm going to frame it, take it to my father's bedroom and hang it there and say, here is your degree, goodbye. Lo and behold, today she's one of the most passionate doctors I know. Wow. Rising in the ranks, trying to get into every crack and crevice, passionate about what she's doing. Was the father wrong or was the father right? Right? And so that's why the balance has to be there, because sometimes you have to be paddocked into your passion, because you don't see what your parents saw in you. Some of these things maybe the father saw in her when she was a 3-4-year-old, carrying her little toys and treating all these dolls in her room. And he recorded that somewhere and said, this is a doctor. Years happen, teenagehood comes, we hit the roof and begin to think our parents are senile. And then at 27, you realize, by the way, these guys are genius. And so being able to find that balance, if you know, and if that is the way to go, then do it. There are parents who have received the degree after that and have been comfortable with it, and their children have gone ahead and done other things. There are those who said, I'm not going and I'm not going, and they have stuck it and they have still made it. Each family has to understand its dynamics and the wisdom around it. Because if you don't understand that, then you might miss what should be like for this lady, or you might be able to miss the blessing of your parents taking you through your first degree. And you can do your second, third degree. I have a friend of mine, and Vivian mentioned this. I have a friend of mine who is a full medical doctor. Went to School of Medicine because he got an A. And he comes from a poor family. He didn't have the luxury of group of schools like many of us here were. He had to go to university because that is all they could afford. He had lost his dad in his youth. His mom in his youth, and she was the sole breadwinner. And then he finished, and in his head, he knew he's a pilot. And he took himself through School of Aviation. He's a full medic and a full pilot. not a single credential missing. I meet him at the airport once in a while, and he's like, yeah, and we laugh always because I'm like, your flight is probably one of the safest. You can heal and fly at the same time. So,
sorry.
Yeah, find that balance.
It's okay. I love what you've said, because maybe sometimes that we can think that parents are wrong. We are right. We're young, we're free. We need to do what we need to do. We are technologically advanced. We have all the information. But maybe there are things that your parents actually see in you that you may not see in yourself. And just being open-minded to that maybe when your parent says something, then you can go back and say, what has he said? What has dad said? What has mom said? Just testing out.
Remember that they're carrying the school fees.
That is true. That's so true.
I remember David about that school fees card. I remember when I was just making that transition between high school and campus, my dad just said a very simple thing. He said, hizi miaka zote umechora kwa vitabu, sahii ndo unakataa kwenda art school. So I was feeling real bad. Maybe I didn't make my parents proud, as I went back to my dad saying I want to become a lawyer or a doctor, something, just give me another chance or something like that. I said, hizi miaka zote umenisumbua ukichora kwa kitabu, it's your time. And he took me to a college, that graphics and animation college, and paid the whole fees for about 2 years worth of fees. He took his retirement money, so he had saved up, and he paid, and he said, I've done my part. Now you pursue it. Wow. That same dad right now is a very proud father, and I'm a very proud son. So I'm very grateful for that insight. Sometimes parents just do understand us, and they know where we came from, and they see it. As much as it may not appear to us like they are endorsing it. It's just that different times in life there are different priorities, but they're taking notes, especially if you're a parent or a teacher. It's good to, and a good one of that, it's good to be taking notes and seeing where your child is projecting towards. Yeah.
Thank you. One last question before we wrap everything up. I'd like to know what's the role of educators. We're looking at our teachers, just the external environment away from parents. What role can other people in the society play to make sure that youths go to higher levels? I will start with Vivian.
Okay. Teachers are very important in a child's life. Most of the time, teachers are the ones who actually, apart from parents, they build a child's self-esteem. Whatever your teacher tells you, you carry it for a lifetime. So teachers shape how children look at themselves. Then the quality of education that they give you, are they teaching you to just pass exams, or are they teaching you in a way that you're acquiring knowledge that you can apply it later on? Then teachers are also mentors. When apart from just teaching you the lessons, teachers are the people who children and teenagers and even adults go to when they have an issue, when they need to talk about other things. Children actually view teachers as the people who know everything. In fact, at times it overrides the parent. When a parent tells you do this, but teacher said this other way. Yes. So they play a very important life in shaping each and every person in the society. The leaders of today were shaped by their teachers. And one other thing I can say about the role that other people can play in the society, maybe the government should look into equipping teachers very well. Maybe they should motivate them, not just financially, recognition, and just make their role feel and know that it's very important, because that way it shall help them impact the children in a different way. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd open this up to Eileen, Jackson, Pastor David. Any of you want to comment further on this?
Let me speak from my perspective as a teacher. It's very critical what role the teacher plays. Spends probably more time with a student than the average parent will. In some cases, probably in the lifetime. If you do like the 8 years in primary school, if you go with a teacher through those 8 years, it will take your parent probably about 30 years to recover those 8 years because of the amount of just physical contact time a teacher spends with the children. The teaching of values, yes, has a place in the family and a strong one, but a teacher becomes such a strong model. Literally, any one of us will tell stories of where a child told the parent, but teacher said so. And it doesn't matter who you are, whether you are the CEO of the school or what. And the teacher says, this is how you pray, or this is how you read this word, you've lost the path. And so the influence of a teacher is quite huge. Unfortunately, we don't value teachers. In fact, the reason why many of us have not gone into the teaching area in as much as our parents were teachers, like myself and Eileen, is because we thought it's a menial job. They're not paid enough. They are always being, dragged with the commons of society, which was a different story from our parents' age, when the teacher was this fountain of wisdom for community. They were respected. And so we've lost the value of respecting and honoring the teacher. And with that, the student has lost the value of drawing such wisdom and understanding that would help not just them, but the future generations who have been taught under such astute teachers, confident teachers, self-assured teachers who are there because they love what they do. And so we are raising a generation of people who don't love what they do, but they do it anyway because they were taught by people who don't love what they do, but they were doing it anyway. Let's support what the teachers are doing. If you're learning, pick your teacher's mind. If they're pushing you, appreciate it. Some of us will want the teacher who is softest. Get that hard teacher. Let them push you through the cracks until you come out better. You might not appreciate it now, but you'll appreciate it later. As a teacher, I would say the biggest investment I do in my students' life is to model for them, because second to the parent and the pastor, you are so close. I think you're probably at the same level with a parent as a teacher. So let's model to them. Let's give them our best.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much. I think we'll actually end here. Let me just recap the conversation from the start. Is that I think my key takeaways is that if we start molding children from when they're young, we're looking at character development. We're looking at just teaching them how to be consistent, how to be disciplined, how to be persistent, helping them acquire social skills, affirming them, learning what their talents are, transitioning it to teenagehood where they know what they actually want, at least for Gen Z. And then now just making sure that they're not only reminded to their careers, but also they just extend further to being social beings as well. Just not technology, and individualistic as well. In the third section of life, which is in the 20s, it's all about being proactive. Proactivity means networking intentionally and building up and going up with your peers. As they're going up, you go up with them, practicing excellence, practicing hard work as well, and just being able to just find mentors and experiment with life. And that's how you kind of get, for those who haven't figured out young what they're good at, it's to figure out by experimenting through their 20s and knowing that it's okay to fail, fail fast, come back up. So with that, we wrap up. And I want to thank you so much, Vivian, Jackson, David, and Eileen. I cannot thank you enough for this conversation. Thank you to everybody who participated. And I just want you all to say your final words. We'll start with Vivian, followed by Jackson, then Dr. David, and we'll finish off with Eileen. Vivian?
Thank you, Agnes. I'd just like to once again encourage you, if you're a parent, I'd encourage you to discover your child from the word go and encourage them to be who they were created to be. They are wired for their purpose. So don't throw away their purpose. Remember, they can always do more than one thing in life. Encourage them through their purpose, encourage them through things that build them and their interests, and they will shine in life. And if you're a teacher, speak into a child's life. Remember, every word, every deed, every action towards this child will shape them for life. If they become a leader, it will shape them to be who they are. Whether a good leader or a bad leader, they pick it up from you. Parents and teachers, children learn by watching you and everything that you say to them. And if you're a student, nothing is ever a waste. If you're in a career right now, you're in college and you're doing something you don't enjoy, I always believe there's a reason for everything. Use it as a stepping stone to take you to your next level. And when you trace back in life, in future, you'll say, actually, this is the reason I went to campus and did this before I did that. Always connect the dots. Enjoy every bit. Remember, it's never a waste. Thank you.
Thank you, Vivian. Thank you so much. Jackson?
Thanks, Vivian, for that. That's very well summarized. Kutangulia sikufika. Don't measure yourself with where people are or who have gone ahead of you. If you're out there and you're passionate about something, you have a dream, I'd like to let you know that as long as you're alive, you have a chance and opportunity to work on it. Also, don't settle for less. If something if the shoe doesn't fit, it doesn't fit, but doesn't mean you throw it away. Okay, zamani tuko tunakata viatu tunatengeneza slingshot. David aliua Goliath na slingshot. If the shoe doesn't fit, it's just take it as a show of indication of growth. All right. So continue developing yourself, continue propelling yourself to the next level. If you're a parent, if you're a teacher, be alert, be present, see what's happening in your student's life, see what's there, what's developing in the life of your students, of your child. Develop their personalities, what's taking shape, see how to nurture it. Okay, develop some leniency. It's okay to make mistakes. They will make mistakes. Nobody was born hitting the ground running. There's that process of growth, and that is okay. That's very, very well okay. There's also this analogy of how do you compare between a fish and a monkey, which can climb a tree faster. You see, if you have a certain kind of mentalities really tend to limit us as individuals. So I'd encourage us to feel safe with the persons that we are and try to find our own ways of expressions. All right. If you're disadvantaged, let's say you feel disadvantaged because of the school you went to or the certain exposure you have or you didn't have, that's marking. It's like you're marking your life comparing with other people. But if you define your own life and choose to find your own way of expression, your own unique way of communicating your passions, your desire, you'll find whatever comes out of you will be uncontended, to be unique, it will be marked with your personality, to be well accepted because it's different. It's not everything that we are seeing. Thank you guys so much, Ngamia Africa. You guys are amazing. I like what you're doing. Thank you, Agnes, for taking us through. The guys who are listening, co-panelists, keep those questions coming in. We appreciate.
Thank you, Jackson. Mr. David, your parting shots.
Thank you. I like that you called me Dr. David a moment ago.
Wow.
I had that.
Oh, wow.
If I'm missing something.
You know.
For a child who was, my parents didn't even imagine I would go to university. It's a huge step. I think by the time I finished Form 4, my parents were done. They were like, this guy will never pursue education any further, but see God. So I just want to say, it's not always about money. There is a lot of impact that people can have without a coin in their pocket. Money has waylaid some great gifts and talents, has waylaid some great opportunities for transformation of societies in amazing ways. Don't settle for less. Don't settle for just having a paycheck in your pocket, having a good car, good house, a beautiful wife, a 6-figure salary, and 2 dogs and 3 children. There's more to life than that. And so my parting shot would just be for you, don't settle. I like the symbol, the slogan for this phone company that says never settle. Don't settle. If it's about money, you can have your money tomorrow. But will you leave impact? So find what you are built to do. Find that diamond and leave an impact in your generation. Don't settle where your parents settled. Don't settle where we have settled as your leaders. Don't settle where this continent has settled. Never, never settle. Asante.
Thank you, Pastor David. Lastly, we have Eileen. Your parting shot, please.
Thanks very much, Agnes. I'll just recap what I said earlier, maybe say it in a different language. I think it should be Luo, and I'm hoping I pronounce it right. But it says, chak a chak. I think just begin. There's so much power in starting. Once you, even before you figure out the exact end, just begin. And in just starting, I think comes with a lot of power in terms of building clarity about how the end would be. Someone once said that direction is more critical than speed. And so being able to build clarity as you go and not just focusing on rushing becomes important. And so that is why sticking throughout the process and enjoying the process becomes important, because it's through the process that the outcome is shaped further. And then, let's enjoy the processes as we go through, and no process is a waste of time. Every process is important in shaping our next phase. And so being able to focus on enjoying that moment and taking time at that particular season is of critical importance. Thank you so much for this opportunity to be able to listen in from other panelists. I think every day is an opportunity to learn. You can trust me that I have equally, as a panelist speaking to everybody else, it's also speaking to me. And so I've enjoyed the conversation. Thank you so much for this platform, and have a good evening.
Thank you so much. Trust the process. Trust the process. Thank you guys so much. If you have any additional questions or you'd like to connect directly with any of our panelists, you can either, I think Ngamia will put all the details below in terms of email addresses, and you can reach them. But all in all, I'd like to say thank you so much for your time. Thank you for coming through, and enjoy the rest of your evening. Have a good one.
Thank you very much too.
Thank you.